The moment the bank teller laughed at the book, I knew something was wrong. Not a polite smile, not confusion, a real nervous laugh. The kind people make when they see something they weren't supposed to see anymore. "That old thing?" she said, tapping the counter with her nail. "Sir, this hasn't been used in decades." I didn't answer. I just watched her eyes flick to the supervisor's office behind her, then back to the worn brown passbook in my hands. My late wife's passbook. The one my daughter had thrown into the trash 2 weeks earlier because, in her words, it's worthless. Banks don't even work like that anymore. The passbook was thin, faded, the edges soft from years of being handled carefully. My wife, Eleanor, had always treated it differently from everything else. Bills could be stacked, papers could be folded, but that book was wiped clean before being put away, every single time. I never asked why. We were married 41 years, long enough to know when a question wouldn't get an answer. After Eleanor passed, the house filled with helpful noise. My daughter came over daily. She sorted drawers, cleared shelves, talked about modernizing things. I let her. I didn't have the energy to argue about objects when I was still learning how to sit at the table alone. The passbook sat on the kitchen counter that morning. She picked it up like it was junk mail. "Dad, what is this?" she asked. "Your mother's," I said. She flipped through it, unimpressed. "This is ancient. Banks stopped using these before I was born." "Just put it back," I told her. She didn't argue. She smiled, nodded, and later, while I was upstairs, she threw it out with the rest of the paper clutter. I only noticed it was gone days later. I felt the absence before I understood it, like realizing a picture had been taken off the wall, but still seeing its outline. When I asked her, she didn't even hesitate. I tossed it. "Dad, it was nothing. You don't need to hold on to every piece of the past." I wanted to believe her. I almost did. The reason I walked into the bank that morning had nothing to do with the passbook. I needed to update a beneficiary on a small checking account. That was it. Simple. Then the teller asked for Eleanor's full name. Then her screen froze. Then came the laugh. She excused herself and disappeared into the back. Minutes passed. Other customers shifted behind me. I could feel their irritation pressing into my back. When she returned, she was no longer smiling. "Sir," she said carefully, "do you have the original passbook associated with this account?" "I did," I said. Her mouth tightened. "Did?" I told her the truth, that it had been thrown away, that it was old, that I'd been told it didn't matter anymore. She didn't respond right away. She just nodded once and stood up. A man in a gray suit appeared instead, older than her, too polished for a regular branch employee. He didn't offer his hand. "Please come with me," he said. The office door closed behind us with a sound that felt heavier than it should have. He didn't sit immediately. He pulled Eleanor's name up on his screen and stared at it longer than was comfortable. "That passbook was not worthless," he said. I felt my chest tighten. "It was a physical verification key," he continued, "one that should not have existed anymore." I asked him what that meant. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he stood, locked the door from the inside, and picked up the phone. "Yes," he said quietly. "It's active. He's here." Outside the office, I could hear raised voices. A printer jammed. Someone swore under their breath. Then, all at once, the bank went quiet. The man looked at me again, this time without making any attempt to hide his concern. "Sir," he said, "I need you to tell me everything your wife ever said about this account." I thought of Eleanor at the kitchen table, sliding the passbook back into the drawer like it was something dangerous. I thought of her last week in the hospital when she squeezed my hand and said, "If anything ever feels wrong, go in person. Don't call." And for the first time since my daughter had thrown that book away, I understood that it hadn't been a memory. It had been leverage. They didn't let me leave the office right away. Not physically, no one blocked the door, but the room itself changed. The man in the gray suit stopped speaking like a bank employee and started choosing his words like someone who knew every sentence could become a problem later. "Your wife," he said, lowering his voice, "opened the account a long time ago, longer than our current systems go back." That doesn't sound illegal, I replied. He nodded. It isn't. What happened after might be. He wouldn't look at me when he said that. Through the glass wall of the office, I could see the branch floor in fragments. A customer arguing at the counter, a teller whispering to another, someone standing by the printer, arms crossed, staring at a screen that refused to cooperate. No one was smiling anymore. Why would a passbook still matter? I asked. He hesitated, just long enough to confirm my fear. Because, he said, your wife never migrated the account. I didn't understand. I told him that. He exhaled slowly. Over the years, we've updated systems, digitalized records, consolidated legacy accounts. Most customers comply automatically. Letters are sent, deadlines are given, old instruments become invalid. And Eleanor didn't? No. He finally looked at me then. She refused. I felt a strange mix of pride and dread. That sounded exactly like her. Eleanor never raised her voice. She never made scenes. She simply said no once and expected the world to adjust. She came in every few years, in person, always in person. She would present the passbook, update interest entries, then leave. No online access, no cards, no transfers. That sounds cautious, I said. It was, he agreed. Too cautious. He clicked something on his screen and turned it toward me. I didn't see numbers. I saw warnings, red markers, internal notes that were clearly never meant for customers. This account, he said carefully, is tied to a batch. A batch of what? He closed the screen again. Funds. That was the first time the word money entered the conversation, and it changed everything. The room felt smaller. My throat tightened. How much? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, there was a knock on the door. Sharp. Urgent. Another man stepped in without waiting for permission. Younger. No jacket. His tie was loose, like he'd put it on in a hurry. We have a problem, he said. The gray-suited man didn't respond. The system's locking us out. Not just that account. It's branching. Branching how? Across terminals. Anything connected to legacy reconciliation. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew enough to stay silent. The younger man finally noticed me. His eyes flicked to the chair, to the closed door, to my hands folded in my lap, like I was waiting for a verdict. Who is this? He asked. Our customer and her husband. Something passed between them then. Recognition or realization. The younger man's face drained of color. That's not possible, he muttered. It is, the older man replied. The passbook existed. The word existed hung in the air like a mistake that couldn't be undone. I thought of my daughter standing in the kitchen, rolling her eyes as she dropped the book into the trash. I'd even thanked her for helping that day. My chest tightened at the memory. What happens now? I asked. No one answered me immediately. The younger man was already on his phone, speaking in clipped phrases, pacing the length of the office. The older man sat back down, rubbing his temple like he was trying to stop a headache before it became something worse. Now, he said eventually, we verify. Without the passbook? He nodded once. Without the passbook. His tone suggested that this was not preferable, not even close. You should know that your wife was thorough. I almost smiled. She asked very specific questions about audit trails, about record permanence, about what happens when institutions change hands. Did you answer her? Yes, at the time. Another voice shouted from outside the office. Someone swore again, louder this time. I heard a drawer slam. The younger man returned, phone still in hand. Head office is aware. They want us to pause all discretionary operations. All? All. That word landed heavy. I stood up slowly. Am I in trouble? Both men looked at me like the question hadn't even occurred to them. No, the older man said immediately. You're not. He hesitated, then added, but the branch might be. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. He unlocked the door and gestured for me to step out. The main floor felt different now, like a room where something had already gone wrong, but no one had announced it yet. Customers were being asked to wait, screens were frozen, a handwritten sign had appeared near the counter. Temporary delay, thank you for your patience. As I walked toward the exit, the older man stopped me. If you find the passbook, he said quietly, do not bring it here. I turned to him. Where should I bring it? His jaw tightened. Somewhere safe. Outside, the air felt colder than it had an hour earlier. I sat in my car and didn't start the engine. I pulled out my phone and stared at my daughter's name. For the first time, I didn't know what to say to her. And for the first time since Eleanor died, I felt certain of one thing. She knew exactly how this would unfold. I didn't call my daughter right away. I sat in the car until the heater stopped blowing warm air and the windshield fogged just enough to blur the bank behind me. People were still walking in. None of them knew they might not be able to get their money out in an hour. Eleanor would have hated that part. Innocent people caught in the middle. I drove home slower than usual. Every red light felt longer, heavier. When I pulled into the driveway, I just sat there, staring at the trash bins lined up along the curb. The city had already come that morning. The bin that once held the passbook was empty now. Clean. Final. Inside the house, the silence felt different than it had since Eleanor died. Not empty. Expectant. I found myself opening drawers she used to keep organized. The kitchen one with rubber bands and paper clips. The hallway cabinet with old warranties and instruction manuals. I wasn't looking for the passbook anymore. I knew it was gone. I was looking for something else. A sign had missed. A note. Anything. Nothing. On the dining table sat a thin envelope I hadn't noticed before. My name, written in Eleanor's handwriting. Not shaky, precise. Inside was a single sentence. If they ever tell you it doesn't matter anymore, that's when it matters most. I sat down hard. That afternoon, my phone rang. Not my daughter, an unknown number. Mr. Hale? Yes? This is Martin Feldman from Northern Trust Compliance. I believe you visited the Glenview branch earlier today. My stomach tightened. Yes. I'd like to ask you a few questions. About what? A pause. Just long enough. About your late wife. He suggested we meet. Neutral location. Not the branch, not my home. A cafe across town. He said it like a courtesy. It didn't feel like one. When I arrived, Feldman was already there. Mid-50s. Calm. Too calm. The kind of man who never raises his voice because he never has to. He'll be direct, he said after ordering. Your wife's account triggered an automatic escalation. Because of the passbook? I said. Yes. You said it shouldn't exist anymore. He nodded. Correct, which is why its absence is problematic. I waited. Your wife opted out of 3 system transitions, legally, repeatedly. She preserved the physical audit trail while the digital one was adjusted. Adjusted how? He folded his hands. Before my time. That was the first lie. I could hear it. What does this have to do with freezing the branch? I asked. He looked at me, measuring. Branches don't freeze. Processes do. I didn't like the distinction. Your wife's account is linked to a legacy consolidation from over 25 years ago, he went on. Several accounts were merged, interest calculations were standardized, minor discrepancies were resolved internally. Resolved? I repeated. Yes. I leaned forward. How much was hers? Feldman didn't answer. He took a sip of coffee he hadn't touched until now. What matters, he said instead, is that your wife never consented to the resolution. The cafe felt too loud suddenly. Dishes clinking, a baby crying somewhere behind me. She knew? I asked quietly. She suspected. Enough to refuse. And now? Now the system is forced to reconcile the unreconciled. I stared at him. In English. He met my eyes. If the original terms of your account are honored, it creates questions. What kind of questions? The kind that require looking backward. I sat back. Eleanor hated looking backward. Unless there was something buried there that shouldn't be. My daughter threw the passbook away. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. That's unfortunate, he said. For you or for me? For everyone. When I got home, my daughter was already there, sitting at the kitchen table, pale, phone in her hand. "Dad," she said before I could speak, "the bank called me." "What did they say?" "They asked about Mom, about papers, about a book." I sat across from her. "You threw it out." She nodded, eyes filling. "I didn't know, I swear. I thought it was nothing." Outside, a car drove past slowly. I watched it through the window. "The branch closed early," she said. "My friend works near there. She said people were angry. ATMs stopped working." I closed my eyes. Eleanor had always said the same thing about systems. They work until someone remembers how they started. I opened my eyes and looked at my daughter. "This isn't over," I said. She swallowed. "What did Mom do?" I thought of the envelope, the sentence, the way Eleanor never explained things twice. She made sure that if anyone ever tried to erase her, they'd have to erase themselves too. And somewhere across town, an entire bank branch sat locked, lights on, money inside, waiting for an answer that no longer existed on paper. The next morning, the news said it was a technical disruption. That's the phrase they used. Clean, empty, reassuring. A lower third banner scrolling calmly beneath a smiling anchor while footage of frustrated customers played in the background. I watched it from the kitchen table while my daughter stood at the sink, pretending to wash a mug that was already clean. "They're not saying why," she said. "They won't," I replied. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. I didn't answer this time. Eleanor used to say that urgency was a tool. If something was truly important, it would come back slower. By noon, it did. This time it was a voicemail. Same man. Martin Feldman. His voice was different now, less polished. "Mr. Hale," he said, "I need to clarify something from yesterday. Please call me back as soon as possible." I didn't. Instead, I drove back to the bank. The parking lot was half full, half blocked off with temporary barriers. A printed notice was taped to the front doors. "Branch closed, system maintenance." Someone had written "liars" across it in black marker. Inside, through the glass, I could see movement, people, boxes, computers being unplugged. When a security guard stepped out to stop me, he hesitated. He checked his phone, then looked at me again. "You're Mr. Hale," he said. "Yes." He stepped aside without another word. That scared me more than if he'd refused. The lobby smelled different, like dust and overheated electronics. The teller stations were empty, screens dark. A woman I recognized from the previous day sat on a chair near the wall, head in her hands. The gray-suited man from before approached me. He looked like he hadn't slept. "They told you not to come back," he said quietly. "They told me not to bring the passbook," I answered. He didn't correct me. "We've been instructed to suspend all customer-facing activity, effective immediately." "For how long?" He shook his head. "Until they understand what your wife did." That sentence settled deep in my chest. He led me into the same office as before. The glass wall was now covered with paper, printed reports, red stamps, internal memos. On the desk lay a single sheet turned face down. "That's your wife's," he said. I flipped it over. It was an internal account summary. Eleanor's name at the top. A number beneath it that made my breath catch. Not because it was astronomical, but because it was exact. Too exact. Calculated down to fractions of a cent that shouldn't still exist. "What is this?" I asked. "The original balance," he said, "plus interest, under the terms she never agreed to change." I looked up. "And the rest?" He swallowed. "The rest is missing." That's when I understood. Not just what Eleanor had done, but why. "This branch didn't lose the money," I said slowly. "No," he replied. "The system did." He closed his eyes. 25 years ago, there was a consolidation error. Multiple branches, multiple accounts. It was resolved internally. By who? People who retired rich, or didn't retire at all. And Eleanor? She noticed. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my daughter. "Dad," she whispered, "there are police cars outside the branch." The gray-suited man laughed once, sharp and humorless. They're not here for us. Not yet. He slid the paper back into the folder and closed it. Your wife never tried to take the money. She never moved it, never reported it. Why not? Because reporting it would have let them fix it quietly. I felt cold. She waited. She waited for the system to forget she existed, so that when someone finally said her proof didn't matter anymore, it would matter the most, I finished. Outside, sirens wailed briefly and stopped. The gray-suited man leaned back, exhausted. They can't reconcile this without admitting what they did, and they can't admit it without freezing everything connected to it. How much is everything? I asked. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. From the hallway came raised voices, orders being given, names being written down. The gray-suited man looked at me one last time. If you ever find the passbook, destroy it. I stood up. My daughter already did. His face fell, not with relief, but with fear, because now there was no physical proof left to quietly put back in a drawer. Only records, and records don't disappear without taking entire systems with them.
By evening, the word maintenance disappeared from the bank's doors. In its place was temporarily closed, smaller font, less confidence. I didn't go back inside. I didn't need to. Whatever was happening now had moved past the branch and into places Eleanor had always warned me about. Rooms without windows, conversations without names. At home, my daughter sat on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, scrolling endlessly through her phone. They're saying it's not just one branch, she said without looking up. How many? 3, maybe 4. Transfers are failing. Payrolls didn't go through. I nodded slowly. Eleanor had once explained systems to me using plumbing. You don't notice the pipes until pressure changes somewhere else. That night, I slept badly. Dreams without images. Just wait. The next morning, a letter arrived, hand-delivered. No logo, no return address. My name typed, not printed. Inside was a request. Not a demand, not yet. They wanted me to come in. Head office. My daughter read it over my shoulder. Dad, don't. I have to, I said. Why? Because your mother planned for this meeting, even if she never said it out loud. The building was glass and steel, no sign. Just a receptionist who already knew my name. They didn't put me in a boardroom. They put me in a small conference room with no windows and a table that felt deliberately too large. 3 people waited inside. Feldman was one of them. He looked worse than before. This is informal, one of the others said. A woman, calm, sharp eyes. Nothing about this feels informal, I replied. She smiled thinly. We're trying to contain damage. To whom? I asked. She didn't answer. They showed me documents, summaries, charts, arrows pointing backward through time. A quiet confession laid out without ever using the word theft. Accounts had been merged, excess balances reclassified, interest paths rerouted. All legal looking, all clean. Except for one, Eleanor's. She kept coming, Feldman said. That was the problem. Most people forget or die. She did both, I said. No, the woman corrected gently. She didn't forget. They explained what freezing meant, how one unresolved legacy account forced a system-wide halt, how every workaround created another trace, another risk. What do you want from me? I asked. The woman folded her hands. Confirmation. Of what? That the passbook is truly gone. I leaned back. And if it isn't, then this becomes external, she said. Audits, regulators, criminal review. Silence settled. You're asking me to lie, I said. No, she replied. We're asking you to simplify the truth. I thought of Eleanor wiping that book before putting it away. Not to protect it, to make sure no one else touched it. I can't confirm something I didn't destroy, I said. Feldman closed his eyes. The woman nodded once. Then we proceed as if it may still exist. Outside the room, phones rang nonstop.
Before I left, Feldman caught up to me in the hallway. She knew this would hurt people, he said quietly. She knew it would stop worse people. When I got home, my daughter was waiting. They locked my friend's business account. She can't pay her staff. I sat down heavily. That was the cost Eleanor never spoke about. Late that night, another message came through. Not a call, not an email, a system alert forwarded accidentally, or deliberately, I couldn't tell. Full reconciliation in progress. Estimated completion unknown. I stared at the screen. Eleanor hadn't pulled a lever, she'd removed the pin, and now the entire machine was shaking. By the third day, no one was using the word temporary anymore. They couldn't. The branch stayed dark, so did two others. ATMs worked in bursts, then stopped. Transfers cleared hours late or not at all. Small businesses felt it first, the kind Eleanor used to insist on paying in cash, because systems always fail the quiet ones. My daughter stopped checking her phone. She didn't need to. Every knock at the door made her flinch anyway. That afternoon, Feldman came to the house. Not in a suit this time. No badge, no folder. Just a man who looked like he hadn't been home in days. "I shouldn't be here," he said the moment I opened the door. "Then don't come in," I replied. He did anyway. He stood in the living room, looking at Eleanor's chair like it might accuse him. "They've whitened the frieze," he said. "How far?" "Far enough that people above me are nervous." My daughter hovered near the hallway. Feldman noticed her, then looked back at me. "They found something," he said quietly. "What?" "A pattern." He explained it slowly, too slowly, as if speed itself might make it real. Eleanor's account wasn't unique. It was just the cleanest, the longest untouched, the one with the most complete physical trail. Others existed, partial, digital only, incomplete, easy to bury. "They can't reconcile hers without touching the rest," he said. "And if they touch the rest, then the numbers don't add up." I exhaled through my nose. So this was always bigger than her. Yes. But she was the trigger. He nodded. My daughter spoke for the first time. "Then why didn't they fix it earlier?" Feldman looked at her. "Because fixing it would have meant admitting it." He turned back to me. "They're preparing a narrative." "About what?" "A deceased woman, a clerical anomaly, an outdated instrument." I laughed once. "Blame the dead, it's efficient." Feldman didn't smile. "They want to settle," he said. "With me? With the estate." The word tasted wrong. "They'll credit the account," he continued. "Full original balance, adjusted interest, quietly. And the rest?" He hesitated. "They'll isolate it." "Meaning?" "Meaning they'll make it look like a single error." I stood up. "And the branches?" "Reopened." "The people locked out of their money?" "Forgotten." My daughter shook her head. "That's it?" "That's survival," Feldman said. I walked to Eleanor's chair and rested my hand on the back. I could almost hear her voice, not angry, not triumphant, just disappointed. "She didn't want money," I said. "I know," Feldman replied. "She wanted the truth to be expensive." "Yes." He met my eyes. "And it is. That's why they're here now." "They can't force me," I said. "No," he agreed, "but they can wait you out." I thought of the passbook in the trash. Gone. Irreplaceable. They thought that made them safe. "What happens if I say no?" I asked. Feldman looked away. "Then the freeze spreads, slowly, quietly, until someone above all of us decides it's better to burn a limb than lose the body." That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the table where Eleanor used to sort mail. In the drawer beneath it, I found something I'd never seen before. A thin carbon copy of a letter, unsent, dated years ago, addressed to a regulatory office I recognized from the news. At the bottom, in Eleanor's handwriting, a note. "Not yet." I folded the letter carefully and put it back. By morning, I knew the truth. Eleanor hadn't been waiting for justice. She'd been waiting for leverage to peak, and now it had. The decision was made before anyone said it out loud. By the fourth morning, the city felt strained. Not panicked, not yet, but stretched thin in places people don't usually look. Payroll delays, mortgage payments stuck in processing. A hospital administrator on the radio insisting everything was under control while his voice shook just enough to betray the lie. They were bleeding quietly. Feldman called again. This time he didn't ask to meet. He told me where to be. Head office. Same building, different room. This one had windows. They sat me across from the same woman as before, but now there were more people. Legal, risk, someone from external relations. No names, no introductions, just faces that had learned how to survive crises by outlasting them. "We're prepared to resolve this today," the woman said. I didn't respond. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was an offer. Carefully worded, generous on paper, immediate credit to Eleanor's account. Interest adjusted, estate settlement expedited. In exchange, a declaration, signed by me, stating that to the best of my knowledge, no original physical instrument existed anymore. "The branches reopen," she said. "The systems normalize. This ends." I looked at the document, at the space for my signature. "You're not fixing anything," I said. "We're stabilizing," she replied. "And the others?" She tilted her head slightly. "There are no others." That was the cleanest lie I'd heard yet. "You said this was informal," I said. "It is," she answered, "until it isn't." I stood up. The room shifted immediately. Not alarm, calculation. "If I don't sign," I said, "you'll keep freezing." "Yes." "And if I do?" "Then your wife becomes a footnote." I thought of Eleanor's letter. Not yet. "She didn't want to be remembered," I said. "She wanted you to be." The woman's expression hardened for the first time. "You're not as protected as you think," she said. "I'm not trying to be," I replied. I left a folder on the table. Outside, Feldman caught me near the elevators. He looked relieved and terrified at the same time. "You didn't sign," he said. "No. They're escalating." "I know." That afternoon, it happened fast. First, the press release, carefully vague, ongoing reconciliation issues related to legacy systems. Then, the regulator announcement, temporary oversight initiated. By evening, the word temporary was gone again. They froze the entire region. Not just the branches tied to Eleanor's account, everything connected. Transfers halted, new accounts blocked, corporate lines suspended. They had chosen to burn the limb. My daughter watched it unfold on the news, hand over her mouth. "This is because of us," she said. "No, it's because they waited too long." My phone buzzed one last time that night. A single message from an unknown number. "You can still end this." I didn't respond. Across the city, doors locked automatically. Screens went dark. Customers stood in lobbies demanding answers no one was authorized to give. And somewhere in a system designed to forget, Eleanor's name refused to disappear. The freeze lasted 6 days. On the 7th, the doors never reopened. No announcement, no apology, just a quiet notice pushed out before dawn. Branch operations permanently suspended. By noon, the signage was coming down. By evening, the building was empty. People stood outside anyway, staring through glass at places where their money used to be accessible. Security told them to call a number. The number rang forever. The regional director resigned, then another, then someone higher whose name appeared once on the news and was never mentioned again. Investigations were ongoing. Committees were formed. No one said what they were investigating. The system didn't collapse. It adjusted. Accounts were migrated, liabilities reclassified, losses absorbed where they wouldn't be noticed all at once. Businesses survived or didn't. People adapted because they always do. Eleanor's account was credited exactly once, then locked, not frozen, closed, finalized, paid out to the estate without explanation, without ceremony. The number was correct, painfully correct. My daughter didn't celebrate. Neither did I. What now? She asked when the letter arrived. I folded it carefully and placed it back in the envelope. Now, nothing, I said. She frowned. That's it? Yes. We never heard from Feldman again. The woman with the sharp eyes vanished from public records. The bank's name stayed, just attached to fewer buildings. A month later, I took the unsent letter from Eleanor's drawer and burned it in the sink. Not because I was afraid, because she had already sent it, just not on paper. That was her revenge. Not exposure, not punishment, just forcing them to choose between truth and control, and making sure either choice cost them more than they expected. One evening, as we cleaned out the last of Eleanor's things, my daughter stopped. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "about the book." I nodded. "So am I." She hesitated. "Do you think Mom knew I'd throw it away?" I thought about that for a long moment. "Yes," I said. "I think she counted on it." Outside, traffic moved. Lights changed. The world kept functioning, slightly rougher around the edges, but intact. The branch stayed closed. The system moved on. And the only thing truly gone was the one object that had held it all together. A worthless old book that didn't matter anymore, right up until the moment it did.